Hey guys, welcome to the Whimsical Workshop. In this video, we are going to be making another Minky project using Minky from QT Fabrics. We're going to be making a hip hop Minky quilt and then turning it into a Quillow. If you're not sure what a Quillow is, stay tuned. So let's get started. All right, so we are going to be taking these beautiful Minkies. I've already cut everything. And we're going to be using it to make the hip hop Minky quilt. So this is just a row by row quilt. It's got these adorable kitty heads as the main fabrics, and the purple is the back, and then the green is the sashing between the rows. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how to sew your rows together, but the main thing about this video is we are going to take this quilt, and by adding a pocket to the back of the quilt, we are going to make it a Quillow, which means it folds up into a pillow, or you can open it up and use it as a blanket. It's kind of a cool little trick to do with quilts, and Minky is a perfect material to do it with because it is so cuddly. So for the hip hop Minky quilt, you will be able to download the pattern for free online, and it'll give you all of your measurements that you need, but I'm going to put that right there if somebody wants to do a screenshot. And when you sew Minky together, you always want to use a 1/2 inch seam allowance, not a 1/4 inch. Now this is very, very low loft. So the 1/2 inch seam allowance rule is when you're sewing Minky to Minky. I do that no matter low loft, high loft, it's going to be a 1/2 inch seam allowance. If you were going to use Minky and mix it with cotton or flannel, the low loft Minky, again, you can see just how thin this is, can be done with a 1/4 inch seam allowance when sewing it to a cotton or flannel. The higher lofts, you're still going to want to do a 1/2 inch, and if you're doing a traditional quilt pattern, you will need to make adjustments to your cutting pieces to make them bigger if you're mixing Minky in with the cotton and have to increase your seam allowance. That is a mouthful. All right, so we are going to start by making the quilt top, and I'm going to just show you how I'm going to clip my pieces together. I will then sew the quilt top together, and then we will come back and actually do the Quillow part of the video, which is, I think, the part everybody's going to want to see. So let me grab my Wonder Clips, and I'll be right back. So when you are sewing Minky together, Minky does have a nap to it. It has a direction. So I'm going to see here and move all this stuff out of the way. When you run your hand across it like this, you can kind of see, if I put it up really close, you could see it kind of pushes the fabric up, and then if you push down, everything's nice and smooth. So it's like hard, it resists your hand to go up. So this piece, the nap, is going down. So when I am going to be sewing this, you are going to want to make sure the nap is all going in the same direction, just so the quilt all has the same feel. If it doesn't, it's not the end of the world. This is a very low loft Minky. So it's going to be fine if you accidentally flip a piece, but it is a good practice to try to get all of the nap going in the same direction. So to make the quilt, we have the cat head to start with, and then we have a green strip here. Now this is a little bit higher loft. It's a little bit thicker. See there, it's just a little bit thicker. But you'll also notice when you cut Minky on smaller pieces especially, it likes to try to curl up on you. And for that reason, I like to use Wonder Clips instead of pins, because the Wonder Clips have a nice fat head. It's a 1/2 inch head, and it helps hold that edge flat and straight as I'm ready to sew. And Minky does like to slide a bit because it is slippery. So here I am, I'm checking my loft. My loft is going that way. So my loft is down, this one is down, and then I'm just going to put this on here. Now these strips I cut to width, but I didn't cut them to length. So I'm going to just cut the selvage off the end here. And you can cut them to length. So this is a cheater method on how I put borders on quilts as well. I will pin them on and then trim them to match. That way, if my piecing gets a little off, or this fabric stretched a little bit, you can do it that way. Now, some people are screaming at the camera right now going, no, 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 cut them to length. if that is how you do it, please do it. This is just how I'm going to do it. And you can either follow along or do your own method. Okay, so we're going to go ahead. We're going to start pinning this on with our Wonder clips. And again, you can use, I love the clover ones. These, you can tell these two are not clover. I can tell by the spring. The clover ones have just the right amount of spring. Some of the more generic ones, the spring is either too easy or too hard to open or close. But they do grip the fabric really well. And you see, I am getting the back edges lined up, not the nap. So you can see here where the nap, see how it's off there? That's because when I aligned the green, I was talking and I wasn't aligning the back edge. So you kind of have to pull it up and over and then push it down to kind of get it to line up, because the nap is like trying to nest together. So you kind of got to give it a hand when you're doing that, and you will have much more even seams. Now, the next thing I'm going to tell you about sewing this is when you sew 1/2 inch seams, even though we don't do it very often, do take the time to mark the 1/2 inch seam allowance on your sewing machine bed so that as you're sewing, you keep it straight, and don't try to guesstimate it, because it will, and it will not come out right. So do take a moment, mark with a piece of tape on your machine where your 1/2 inch seam allowance is if you don't already have it marked, and your piece will come out much prettier. So this is how we're going to do it. I'm going to get here to the other end, show you I'm going to trim it, and that is how the whole quilt top will go together. So we're using 3 fabrics. We're using the really cute little cat heads here for the main fabric, and you've seen we're using the lime green. Actually, we're using 4 fabrics. The lime green is the sashing. And then we've got this really cute flower that is going to be the offset strip in between the cat heads, because you can't have too many cats. And then finally, we're going to use this really pretty soft lilac. That is going to become the back of the project. So then when I get to the end, pull this back in camera because we moved a little off the table. And I just align the edge of the sashing with the cut piece of fabric, and with a pair of scissors, just cut that off. Okay, so this is ready to sew. So how would I assemble this quilt? I would, because I'm constantly paying attention to the nap, I'm going to clip the sashing to the main piece. So this is the bottom row, and the bottom row gets the green, and then the next row is this floral, which will also get a green. And at the whole time, I'm going to be checking my nap, and then I will continue up. And when I get to the last cat head, it doesn't get anything on it. And that way, when I go to assemble this, I will always know the green is on top. I've only have to check the nap and the fabric once, and I can just sew the rows together to finish the quilt top. So with all that being said, let me go finish the quilt top, and then we will come back and we will talk about how to make a quillo. Okay, I am back. I have got the quilt top put together. Here is what it looks like. Turn it sideways so you can see what it looks like. Now we're ready to create the pocket on the back that will turn this into a quillo. If you take the width of your quilt, in this case it's about 44 inches, and divide it by 3, that worked out to be about 15. That is a nice size for a pillow. So obviously if you make a really big quillo, you may want to change your pocket size a little bit, but I'm going to take 1/3 of the width of my quilt, which was 15 inches, and make that a 15-inch square that we're going to roll the quilt up into. Measurement, which was 44 inches wide, divided by 3, it's approximately 15. I'm rounding it up to give myself a nice number. So I'm going to make the pillow part of this a 15-inch square. So we do need to add seam allowance to that before we cut out our pieces, and so I've added 1 inch in the one direction because we're going to do a 1/2 inch sewn seam on either side, and then I did 1 1/2 on the other direction because we will have a 1/2 inch sewn seam on one side, and the other side is going to get sandwiched between the quilt top and the back and caught in the seam. This part here is the pocket front, and the backing of the quilt becomes the back of the pocket, so that when we turn it, you will have finished fabric on all sides. So I've picked this really cute cat fabric to be hopefully the pocket front, and then this is the back of the pocket. So we are going to clip these two squares together, and then I'm going to take them over, and the 16-inch side, it's only a 1/2 inch difference, so be careful. This is the 16.5. This is the 16. So what you want to do, even if you have to mark it so you don't mess it up, which I'm going to do, this is the 16 side. And I'm going to sew down the 16.5 across the 16 and then back up the 16.5. And I'm going to leave this part open because, again, that is going to get caught in the seam allowance when we put the whole sandwich together. So I'm going to go ahead and clip these together, take them over and get them sewn, and then we will have the front of our Quillow pocket all made up. Have this sewn, so we're going to turn our pocket. This is the pocket front. Don't get confused like I keep getting. You're going to turn it right side out, poke out your corners. Now, this is a finished piece on both sides. So we've got the kitties on one side and the pretty hexagons on the other. Now you can make the back match the backing on the quilt. I'm using 2 different fabrics because this is a really fun project. I thought it'd be fun to add more fabric to it. I know earlier we were going to do the whole thing in lavender, but I changed my mind. All right, so we have our pillow pocket. So the next thing we need to do is we need to grab our backing, which is right here, and we need to make sure we find the short side. This is the top of my backing, and we're going to fold it in half, wrong sides together. We're going to get it up here on the cutting table to support it. So we've got this up here, and what we're going to do is find the center. And I have, where are they? I got these little skinny clips that I love to use to mark center. So that's in the center of the back of the back of the backing. We're going to open this up flat like this. Okay, so this will start to make sense to you here in just a second, hopefully. So here's our backing. I'm going to make sure my loft is going the right way. We're going to position the pocket. This is the front of the pocket. This is the back of the pocket. I just made a double-sided piece of fabric so that we'd have finished Minky on both sides. And we're going to center it on the back, and we're going to clip this in place. Now you can see where those raw edges align with the back raw edges, and then the quilt top will go on top here eventually, and when I sew, that will get caught in the seam, so it works out perfect for us. But what we need to do is secure the pocket to the backing. Now, you are probably asking yourself, why isn't she putting the kitty cat facing up? That is because when we fold up the quilt and roll it in, we're going to turn this inside out, and the kitties will show up on the outside. So we will have a purple back, or we will have kitties in the we will have a purple on the back for a pocket, which is nice. Like, again, you could have made it match. And the kitties will come out on the front when we're all done and we fold this up. So again, we're going to find the center here, and we're going to clip this in place all the way across. And what we need to do now is we only need to stitch these 2 sides down. We need to leave this open because that's where the quilt goes. And this side we're going to catch in the seam. So we're going to clip those there, but we are going to need to grab some straight pins. And you want to make sure that your sides are square, that they're, even with the edge of the quilt. Now you can do this with eyeballing it, you can get a ruler out and measure it, but you want to make sure these are nice and straight, and then we're going to put some straight pins in so that when I take it to the machine, I can do a zigzag stitch and a matching thread and secure the pocket to the background. Now, when I go to sew this down, I want to make sure that I secure these ends because we're going to be going in and out of those a lot, and that is where all of the stress is going to be. So I am actually going to kind of come in at an angle and create a little dart there. And I'm going to reinforce my stitching. So we're going to go ahead, we'll stitch this down. Oops. Stitch it down, we'll come back, and then we're ready to layer this up and sew it together. We now have, let me get this out here. Here we go. We now have our pocket that our quilt will roll up into. So now is time to assemble the whole thing. And this is where you get to make some choices. Now, if you want to quilt your quilt, you're going to need to layer it up with batting, no backing, and quilt it that way, because when we put these two together, we're going to do it like a big sandwich, and then we're going to leave an opening and flip it out. So I'm not going to quilt this because I want to keep this lightweight, and I want it drapey because I live in Arizona. If you can't tell, it's a little warm here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this right sides together with my backing, and this is where, I'm going to turn this so you can see, this is where that top edge of the pocket is going to get caught in the seam when I sew these all the way around. So I'm going to sew around the whole thing with a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I will clip it because this stuff stretches, and I know it's time consuming to clip it, but man, it makes it so much more, much easier to sew together. So I'm going to clip the whole thing with Wonder Clips, sew it, turn it through the opening. Then once it's right side out, I will top stitch around the outer edge, which will close that opening. And we will be done, and I can show you how to roll up a Quillow. So let me get all that done, and I will be back. All right, so we have got this big old thing sewn, and I left an opening somewhere. There we go. So we're going to turn our entire blanket right side out. It's not technically a quilt because we don't have 3 layers with batting. We're going to pull this out. Just go slow. It'll eventually just slide out. This is where the slippery Minky actually helps you out. All right. There is the Quillow blanket. We're just going to poke out all the corners, and then I will go over and I'm going to top stitch all the way around. But just so you can see, that's the blanket, and there's our pocket on the back that we are going to use to fold this up. So I'm going to finish turning this right side out. I will top stitch it, and we've got one more step, and that is to roll it up and put it into its pocket. So I will be right back. All right, so we now have our blankets all top stitched and ready to go into its pocket. So how we do this is we're going to lay it with the pocket side down, and we're going to fold the quilt into thirds, and it's really easy because that's where the edge of the pocket is. I'm going to bring this guy over this way. And then we are going to fold this up till it hits the bottom of the pocket, which is right about there. We're going to fold this up, and we're going to make it a little more square. Does that work? That works. All right, now, so we've got our blanket all folded up. Minky's a little trickier than a quilt. Let's make sure we got it nice and square. I don't think it really matters, but you know, our first time, let's do it the best we can. So that's the bottom of the pocket, and then it goes up into there. Now, we're going to take this, we're going to take the pocket, and we're going to turn it right side out, so the kitties are showing, over the quilt blanket. And you got to just sort of pull it in, and you can just pull the pocket itself out. See how I'm straightening it out so that it is basically it's inside out, but we put the kitties on the inside, so now that's the right side out. There we go. So I'm just poking out the 2 corners, and then we're pulling the quilt itself, the blanket, sorry, inside the pocket. And then you're going to straighten it all nice and neat. And you have yourself a Quillow. All right, there it is. So we will give you directions on how to do this, but basically it is, you can take any quilt and do it. You just are adding an extra panel onto the back of the quilt, and then you can fold up the quilt and roll it up inside of the pockets. And now I have a pillow, or I can open it back up and have a quilt. So I hope you have enjoyed watching the tutorial on how to make a Quillow. It is very fun, very easy. Kids love it. It's great for travel. You could take this with you on a plane. Maybe not out of Minky, so I don't know, it'd be pretty comfortable. I hope you have enjoyed this quick tutorial on how to take a quilt and turn it into a Quillow, or in this case a blanket, and turn it into a Quillow. This is again beautiful Minky from QT Fabrics. The quilt pattern and the Quillow pattern will all be a free pattern available over on QT Fabrics, so make sure you check that out. And as always, I want to thank you for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe and hit the bell if you want to be notified for our new videos. And I will see you next time.